I was throwing
All
it.
right. So from left to right here, we have Mr. Mark.
Yep.
We have Ms. Moore and Ms. Hancock. And if you want to take like a couple minutes to introduce yourselves, just let me know who you are.
Yep. You start first? Okay.
Yes, my name is Alan Marr. I've been as legislator for the past 2 years, and I'm trying to get re-elected this year. Originally, I'm from Montgomery. I had a chance to come to Richford High School way back in the middle 60s, and I went to Edithsburg. Richford had too many good athletes at that time, so I took Edithsburg, so that's how I got there. But we had a lot of good years in competition. Anyway, I ended up staying in Edithsburg and marrying a lady from Edithsburg. And stayed there and married, had children. I don't know, maybe some of you know my oldest son, Nathan tomorrow is a co-op career center. I don't know if anybody goes down there. So if you get any smart on him, you gotta let me know. Okay? I need some things to pick on him about. The reason I'm running is I was there for 2 years. I've seen what position they're putting us in. I mean, the residents and citizens of Richford, Montgomery, Edithsburg, and the whole state of Montgomery. And it's getting very expensive to live here. It's getting very expensive for you people to leave here and get a good job. Housing's a problem. We want to stay here in the area. So I was there for 2 years, and I think with the experience I gained, I can make a difference now. So thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Heather Moore, and I know some of you through my daytime job. I'm the Leaves After School Project Director. So Sharon is the coordinator at your school, and I get the pleasure of working with her and 7 other directors or coordinators across the supervisory unit. Besides that, I live in Edithsburg. My husband's 2 golden doodles, one of which is a registered therapy dog, so sometimes he comes to school visits with as well. I am the community lead for the Vermont Youth Project for Edithsburg and Richford, and part of the Vermont Youth Project has been having a youth council here in Richford, where the students were given funds to do a participatory budgeting process, which helps with understanding some engagement and democracy, and that's brought the color run and some community events around town, and the chicken coop was one of the projects due from a few years ago. Besides that, I am a founding member of a new 501c3 nonprofit called Community Empowering Youth. We are opening a youth center in Edithsburg in the coming months in Richford. Hopefully next year once we secure some more funding. I do a lot of community development work, and I've been part of the Regional Prevention Collaborative for over 10 years, working on substance misuse prevention, and part of that has been a lot of youth engagement work to make sure that youth and the families around them have what they need to have a healthy, thriving community. I am running for the Franklin 7th seat because I see these programs and I see how they help with the communities, and I feel that I can help shift some legislation to help support those programs in more beneficial ways, and that will help us both address challenges that we're facing now and also 10 and 20 years in our future.
Good morning. I'm Representative Lisa Hango. I live in Berkshire. I've been in this part of Vermont for 35 years and spent many years here at Richford High School in various capacities as assistant track coach and also as a substitute teacher. My husband raised 4 children who attended Richford Junior Senior High School for their school careers. And I have a lot of fond memories of being here, so it's great to be back. During my career, I spent a lot of time serving on volunteer boards and committees throughout Franklin County, some of them being affiliated with the Northwestern Medical Center, the Franklin County Home Health Agency, Success for Six, a lot of organizations that came and went over the years. And I feel like I really got to know the community, and even though I wasn't born here, I feel like this is my home. So I see there's some questions about wanting to be a state legislator. I have been a state legislator for 6 years, and at this point I feel like I really know a lot of people in Montpelier, and it's really beneficial to make those relationships with folks and try to talk about the issues, and you can't really do that if you don't know each other. So that's been the way that I've gotten around in Montpelier, is by making those relationships with other people who are also serving their communities. And even though we may think we know what is best for our community, we also have to understand what is best for the state of Vermont.
Just kind of briefly touched on it. Our first question for you all is, what's day-to-day life like for Senator or Representative?
Do you want me to start?
Yeah, you can continue.
Okay, perfect. So we typically start our legislative session right after New Year's, and we go about 16 to 18 weeks with a 1-week break during town meeting. And our typical day is we generally start with committee meetings. We're all assigned to various committees. Mine is the Government Operations and Military Affairs Committee. And there we hear witnesses who will come in either by Zoom or in person and testify about various issues. Those issues pertain directly to bills that have been introduced, legislation that could be passed to be made into law, and we need to find out more about it. We need to vet those ideas to make sure that they're 100% beneficial to Vermonters. And during those committee hearings, we get a chance to personally ask the witnesses questions and for clarifications, and they present us evidence. So committee takes up a lot of our day. We also have House floor sessions, or in the case of the senators, Senate floor sessions. And that's where we debate on and vote on bills. And that is the whole 150 members of the House. You ask the Speaker of the House permission to stand up and speak what you feel about a bill, and somebody else might also ask permission and speak directly against you, why they feel that that's not an important bill to pass. And then we take votes in the House. Our committee meetings, we're able to vote electronically. So if you're homesick, you can vote in the committee to pass the bill out of your committee. But for the House floor, you have to be present in person to vote on those bills. And that's really an important thing that we, as a House, passed. The Senate does it a little bit differently. They allow for remote voting for all committees and the Senate floor bills. Once a bill passes the House, it gets sent to the Senate, so they have a chance to get a crack at it. And it goes to their committees and then also the Senate floor, and vice versa. They send us bills. So it takes a really long time. So most of our day is spent talking to our colleagues about the bills that are floating around. And there could be up to 800 or 900 of them at one time, not all being taken seriously or taken up at that time. But what I've learned in 6 years in Montpelier is anything's a go. So if you have an issue that you want to talk about, or your constituents have something that they want you to bring up, everything is possible. Anything is possible. So the rest of our day, we generally get a lunch break, sometimes not. Sometimes we go into the evening. If things are moving really slowly and we're waiting for the Senate to do something with a bill in the House, we might be waiting until 7 or 8 o'clock at night to actually get our chance to vote on something. So our schedule is pretty packed. We generally work Tuesdays through Fridays only, but there are some committees that also meet on Mondays, and they generally deal with money issues. Some of us stay in Montpelier, and others of us commute. So from this distance, I tend to stay in Montpelier for the week. And it makes it a lot easier for me to connect with other folks who are serving, as well as to really manage my time so I'm not spending 4 hours a day in the car, and I can use that time to read, because we have reams of paperwork to read in terms of understanding those bills.
So I'm going to pass this on to Rep. DeMar, because he actually also knows what it's like for day-to-day in Montpelier.
Gosh, Lisa, I have nothing to say after that. Basically, Lisa was right on task there. And, there's a lot of downtime out there. You know, I'm on the healthcare committee, and again, we get there, we have bills on the wall, and when they come down, we have to deal with them. And a lot of times, we either say yes or no, and if it's a yes, it goes on to another committee. A lot of times you can pass a bill for healthcare, but we haven't talked about how we're going to pay for it. So it might go to Ways and Means Committee. So that bill's on for a few weeks, and it comes back and it changes, and you take it back up. So it's a long day, and sometimes it's a long night. So, but Lisa pretty much said it all. You have anything you want to mention? Yeah. So.
As Lisa mentioned, sometimes there's subcommittees, and a couple years ago I had the pleasure of serving as a community member for the Expanded After School Access Subcommittee. So what I just want to mention about that is state reps sometimes work outside of their 18 weeks, and there's always opportunities for community members to participate and lend voice, as well as talk to your representative and be one of those people that can go to a meeting and share your story.
For Mr. DeMar and Ms. Moore, why are you a better choice to represent East Earning Montgomery?
Well, I'll speak to what I can bring to the job, and that's over 10 years experience of working in large networks of community organizations through education, healthcare, substance prevention, mental health, and through that also some things that don't necessarily seem connected but are, as in participating in safe routes to school or community meetings and showing up and being there. I listen to folks from all ages, and I go to the meetings and I have conversations. I ask why. I don't lead with plans and decisions. I look to see what the outcome is that we're trying to achieve and figure out a way that's going to be the best fit for everybody. I have a lot of experience with complicated budgeting and making sure that we're making wise investments and making our programs are thriving while also not being a major cost burden. And I know in this year, as when a few years previous, cost is a really big concern within our communities. Everybody's worried about paying taxes and increased expenses, especially with initiatives going on. And able to take those inputs, both as a village trustee and my job as director of the after-school programs and other organizations that I partner with, and make sure that we're making very smart decisions and having very positive current outcomes and future outcomes as well.
Yes, I feel I'm a very good choice. Number one, I've been there for 2 years. I would let anybody look at my vote record, and it speaks for itself. I've changed my vote a few times. Like I said earlier, when you get information in the bill, all of a sudden it sounds good, and then you do your research, and all of a sudden there's some unintended consequences that you're not aware of, and sometimes you change your vote. I've done that a few times. So I think I have an open mind. I got some common sense to say what's good for Richford, Enosburg, Montgomery, and the state of Vermont. So I think the experience I've gained in 2 years makes me a good choice. Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm Randy Brock. I'm one of the 2 senators representing the Franklin District in the Senate. I've been there a long time. I was first elected to the Senate in 2008, and before that I was the Vermont State Auditor. I'm currently the minority leader in the Vermont State Senate. And it's tough work, it's enjoyable work, it's rewarding work, and it's work that is there to respond to the people who ask the questions, who look for the demands, who look for results. And that's what we're all about, is trying to achieve results that work for everyone. So thank you very much for inviting us here today.
A question I have for all of you: what can be done to improve Vermont's education system, specifically to make it more equitable between richer and poorer districts?
Sure, I'll start, and by starting, I'll let everybody else finish and come up with good answers. We have a problem with our education system. And the thing that disturbs me the most about it is what we've seen over recent years is it's become more and more expensive. Every single year, the cost of education goes up. But the performance of Vermont students in standardized testing has gone down. The number of students that we have in school has gone down, while the overall cost of spending has gone up. And that's the dilemma. Why? And what should we do about it? Well, one of the things that we have to look at is the amount of administrative overhead in schools and school systems. We've got 62 different supervisory unions at last count throughout Vermont. Every one of them typically has a superintendent, a deputy superintendent, variety of assistants of one kind or another, business managers, and it goes on and on and on and on. And for a state as small as we are, we have a horrendous overhead. And I believe that one of the ways that we can achieve savings in education is to reduce that overhead and make it more streamlined. And we don't have to do it by firing a lot of people, because we have a lot of attrition as it is right now, given the age of the people who are working in our school system. So that's one thing that we can do. The second thing that we can do is, and a lot of people don't like this, is look at larger schools, particularly at the elementary school level. We have one school that I can think of in Vermont that has 34 students in the entire K through 12 school. And the average cost of operating that school is about $44,000 per kid per year. That's an unbelievable number. And it's a number that all of your parents and ultimately you wind up having to pay for by higher and higher and higher costs, particularly in the area of property taxes. There's a point at which we're going to have people lose their homes because they can't afford it. And we have to look at how do we adjust spending. The places we adjust spending in staffing, that's in particularly administrative staffing, healthcare costs because of not negotiating good healthcare costs with an increase of 16% in the last year. Those 2 things alone represent a significant amount of the cost, and also the small size of schools. But I'll leave it to others. I won't try to monopolize the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the question, what can be done to improve Vermont's education system, specifically to make it equitable between richer and poorer districts, has almost been answered. In the past several years, the legislature has passed Act 127, which specifically dealt with pupil weighting. And what that means for districts like ours is, because we're remote and and not near a big city with lots of opportunities, because we have some lower income in comparison to other more wealthy districts in the state, because we might have multilingual learning students, so maybe students who speak another language at home. Because of all those factors, we get a higher weight, and that means, without getting too deep into the weeds, that we have a bigger taxing capacity. So the legislature has already helped districts like ours to narrow the gap between richer and poorer districts. The problem now is how to pay for that, because someone in the state, because we're allowed to spend more money per student, someone in the state needs to pay for that. So my opinion on this, and I don't have an answer, I don't have a magic bullet, is that we need to rework the education funding system, the education finance system. I'm not really sure what the answer to that is. It could be, instead of taxing us on the property that we own, taxing on income, which has been brought up many times in the past. I don't have the answer to it. There is a commission that was set up by the most recent laws that we passed, and that commission is looking at both education funding and education delivery. It'll be another year or so before we get the answers from that commission's work, and they're working really hard to dive into this problem, because we know it's not sustainable in the future. People are going to be taxed out of Vermont if we continue on the current path that we're on. So we're really hopeful that this commission, that is made up of experts, of people who understand education finance and the need for various programs in education, we're really hopeful that they will come up with some concrete answers that we as a legislature can vote on to put into place, so that no town is left behind when it comes to the delivery of high-quality education.
I agree with a lot of the conversation on the Act 27, that the changes has a lot of potential, and there's still work to do as we move forward and get accustomed to a new system. I have also been hearing some ideas around changing the taxing system as well for finances. Some of the drivers that I've been seeing in education budgets are around healthcare and mental health services, which 10 years ago weren't as expensive or as needed within the school systems, and that's a lot of what schools are addressing these days. And that's and some of that is in response to the pandemic that we are still recovering from. So I'd like to see some more work towards lowering the healthcare costs and supporting community partners and expanding mental health and healthcare services, so that the schools aren't necessarily managing that cost. And supporting our students in those ways helps with the academics, definitely. And equity-wise, like the Act 27 is meant to support communities like ours in this area that don't necessarily have direct access to community partners. And so it's meant to be working together.
Yes, everything that you just heard is true, and we still haven't been able to come up with answers for a fix to this. There is a committee down there looking at avenues of maybe switching some of the funding from property tax to income tax. There's a lot of different things. But as Randy said, the cost keeps going up, and we're getting less and less for our dollar. So any way you will look at it, the state legislature, the Senate, and everybody else, we got to come up with some tough choices. Every one of us lives within our means here. We budget, we do things, and the state government's no different. We've got to do what's important to us and what we can afford, and do a good job at it. So, thank you.
remarks, like 2 or 3 minutes. And if elected, will you take any actions to reduce Vermont's cost of living?
Could you repeat that? Please?
Okay. Sorry, I guess if elected, will there be any action taken to reduce Vermont's cost of living?
Same answers I just gave. Tough choices. It's expensive to live here. The government keeps putting bills through that cost us money. Education, climate bill, transportation. Every time these fees go up, and to give you an example, is the DMV transportation fees. We increased all the registrations and all the fees by 20%. These people, your parents, your grandparents, brothers and sisters, are footing the bill for that. So we've got to make tough choices where we spend our money, not just in education, transportation, housing, and get our dollars worth. So that will help the inflation cost.
I think some of this has to do with reinvestments. There's some things that seem indirectly connected, but they ultimately are. So it's following to make sure that our investments are connected to each other. I know that there's climate change reform questions and bills that have been addressed, but we're dealing with climate change. We're paying for that right now with floods and other natural disasters, and that's costing us a lot of money. Same with like healthcare and mental health services. That's a direct contributing factor to the increase change of cost techniques. That's a direct contributing factor to increase in crime and substance abuse, which we're paying for in other ways as well. So I think we need to continue to look at the different factors that are costing our communities, both the social, the social aspect and the financial aspect, and we need to work in partnership with those different bills to get our everything to be less expensive.
The question was, if elected, what will you do to reduce Vermont's cost of living? The answer is basic economics and accounting. Vermont, by statute, by law, has to have a balanced budget. So we have to have as much money coming in as we're spending out. And the spending out is on all kinds of programs. It could be education, it could be mental health, it could be public safety. So the answer that the current supermajority in the legislature has is to, if we want to spend this much money, we need to raise this many more taxes. Specifically, what will I do to reduce the cost of living? I will vote not to raise taxes. And I have voted that way. You can look on the website at our voting records for my entire 6 years in the legislature. Vermonters are facing a crisis of affordability right now. DMV fees are up, property taxes are up, our trips to the grocery store are way more expensive than they used to be. Price of fuel is up. So these factors make it very, very hard for your families to continue to live in Vermont and to enjoy the lifestyle that they grew up with. It is more difficult for my children and grandchildren right now to make a living and be as comfortable in Vermont as when I was their age. And this is a serious problem because we are losing Vermonters. So I will continue to vote against excess tax increases, and also because we have to have a balanced budget, remember that formula right from the very beginning, I will also vote to not expand programs if we don't already have the money that we can allocate for them. It's just like your household budget. If you don't have the money,
You don't go out and buy those things that you might want. It's need versus want. And we're going to, as Dr. DeMar said, have to make some very difficult choices. It is not an easy job to be an elected official and have to vote on things that sound great, but we don't have the money to fund them.
You know, it's easy. Stop spending. It's as simple as that. Consider in your family's budgets and what you have to spend, your parents have to spend. They look at the amount of money that they earn and take in, and then based on that, they decide how to allocate that money, what to spend it on. And when they don't have any more money, they stop spending. Government operates 180 degrees different. They figure out what they want to spend without any controls in many cases, or constraints. And then they figure out how to raise enough money to pay for it. Very different. What often gets lost in what we do in Montpelier is setting priorities and being accountable for what we do. For example, in setting priorities, one of the things we can say is there are lots of great things that we want to do. It's not that anything the government does is bad. It's just there's a limit to how much we can pay for, how much citizens can afford to contribute. And what we have to do is we have to say, what's a reasonable amount that we can collect in taxes? And then make some hard decisions about how we spend it. What's the most important thing and what's the least important thing, and rank them in order, if you will. And then when we spend that money, look at it carefully to say, what did we get for it? Did we get what we thought we were going to get? Is it worth what we spent? If it's not, stop doing that thing and don't do it again. It's simple. Stop spending.
Thank you. All right, so we have one more question, and then we're going to open up to questions. So think about some questions you might have after this one. We have about like 8 minutes left, so run along. So, do any of you plan to make motions to reduce homelessness? And if so, like, what do you want? Like, what plans would you put in action to do that?
Reduce homelessness.
Well, one of the things about homelessness reduction is you have to have homes. You have to have places that people can live. And Vermont has a real shortage of places that people can live. And major part of that is regulation and the cost of doing anything. We can't build housing fast enough. We have so much red tape and regulatory oversight and duplication and time-consuming and number of people involved that it becomes almost a welfare program for lawyers and accountants and engineers. We need to simplify our building process, we need to simplify our approval process, and we need to get on with building houses. We need to also look at building houses that aren't as costly and that are available for people who don't earn a lot of money. And those are the things that we're really lacking right now. If you had more homes, you would have less homelessness. And those people who are homeless for particular reasons, we need to focus on what are those reasons and how can we help people to move out of the homeless situation through education, through medical treatment, through treatment of drug addiction, and other kinds of things we often see among the homeless population. Those are things that should be priorities for us.
So I spent my first 4 years in the legislature on the Housing Committee, the General Housing Committee. And during those 4 years, we did absolutely nothing to increase the number of dwelling units. That could be an apartment, it could be a home, it could be conversion of hotel rooms into dwelling units. We did nothing in those 4 years to increase the number of homes, even though we knew that in the past 40 years, Vermont had been losing dwelling units instead of gaining them. for animal habitats and waterways and that type of thing. For the past 2 years, I worked, as did Randy's committee, on trying to loosen up some of those regulations that we have. It was a great law when it was conceived in 1970-ish, because Vermonters didn't want Vermont to be like New York State with billboards everywhere and housing developments, scattered throughout our forests and farmlands. But as time went on and people moved into Vermont and had no place to live, this law has become a little bit antiquated. So we worked really hard to try to loosen up some of those regulations so we could build more housing and build it quickly. We really didn't get many successes in the past 2 years on that either, unfortunately. We got a few. But as Randy said, the problem is we need more units, we need them fast. We need places for people to have permanent homes. We don't need a whole lot of temporary homes for people. We need places for people who can come in and live in Vermont and fill the job opportunities that we have open. Everywhere you go, there are help wanted signs. And you want to know why? Because nobody has a place to live, so they can't work at those stores or other businesses. The school system itself has vacancies. We don't have homes for the teachers who want to come here and work in Franklin Northeast. Sometimes we have to turn away nurses, teachers, business owners, because there's nowhere for them to live. And they're not allowed to build here without jumping through tons of hoops. So we're working really hard, and we will continue to work really hard to loosen up the regulations so that homes can be built, dwelling units can be built in appropriate places, and to keep them away from the areas that need to be conserved for our hunting and our fishing and our trapping and our general enjoying of nature that we're blessed to have here in Vermont.
I want to add to the conversation about adding housing. That's true. More Housing Act 250 has been reformed, and that seems hopefully, or we're hopeful that will improve more housing opportunities. It's definitely urgent. Part of the question too also talked about the motel voucher program and some other ideas around addressing people that don't have permanent housing. Some of that is you listening to their stories and unpacking like what were the barriers that pushed them out of the housing to begin with. In some cases, it's the homes were unhealthy and unsafe. In other cases, there were medical concerns that compounded and caused major financial stressors. So what's really behind that that's causing them to be in those situations? I've read of several very successful programs similar to the motel voucher program, but that's instead of simply being given a voucher, it's housing opened up to people in these situations, and they're given a lease, and there's a repay system, so it's kind of a pay what you can and pay forward as you can, and that contributes to ownership of the space and your credit score, and helps people be able to move forward. And with these programs are also connections with human services so that people can get the health, the mental health, and maybe the substance abuse treatment that they need within a package deal. And these programs have been working in other places, and they seem to be very successful. And then people then, when instead of just being given an end date and moving on, in some cases, unfortunately, to less appropriate, less safe housing opportunities, such as living in tents, they're able to move forward into different and better housing situations. So that's something that I would love to explore and talk further about how that program could be successful in the state.
I'll keep it quick because everything was answered. Our regulations, Act 250, make it almost impossible to build build a home in a timely manner. It takes weeks, months, and years sometimes. Number two, we need to get some laws or rules or regulations, not just protect the person that's renting, the homeless or low income or doctor or whoever wants to move here. You've also got to have rules and regulations to protect the landlord. Okay, if you're going to spend that money to get a unit ready, you want some type of protection that things are going to work out. You're going to get your rent. They're not going to trash the place. So there's going to be some regulations for the landlord too. Thank you.
Unfortunately, we're out of time, so we won't have like a lot of time for questions, but maybe some of the candidates would stick around for a couple of minutes if you want to go up and ask them and learn more. But other than that, have one last round of applause for the candidates for coming. And we're going to do
I guess I'll